Hello and welcome to a new episode of the Demand Gen Club podcast. I'm your host, Franco Caporale. Our guest today is Krystal Guerra, Director of Demand Generation at Instructure. Instructure is the company that helps people grow from the first day of school to the last day of work. More than 30 million people use its Canvas and Bridge platforms for learning management and employee development. Krystal has over 10 years of experience in event programming, media relations, digital marketing, and demand generation. She thrives on marketing solutions that drive results and has worked with hundreds of clients ranging from mid-sized to large enterprise Fortune 500 companies and has been involved in raising over $8 million in venture capital. Krystal is also the CEO and founder of Guerra Media, an agency dedicated to advocating for inclusivity, women in leadership, and preparing young adults for career success. In 2019, Krystal was recognized as one of Utah's 30 women to watch by Utah Business Magazine. So I'm really happy to welcome today Krystal Guerra, Director of Demand Generation at Instructure. Krystal, it's really great to have you on the show today. Thank you so much for joining us.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me.
So I want to start right away with a little bit about your background and your story, how you got started with demand generation, and some of the roles that you had in the past as well as your current role.
For sure. So, like I said, it's great to be here. My background is definitely far from tech, and so it's fun now being in demand gen and learning tech. I've been in tech for a little bit over 10 years now. Where I started was I actually always had an interest in marketing. So I am a Utah native, born and raised in Utah, in a very small farming kind of rural community. And that really was my introduction into business and the world of marketing. My dad is a commercial farmer. And so growing up, I just thought it was child labor. But as I got older, I realized that it was fun to connect people with solutions and to be able to connect them to value and a product that they were looking for. And so that was kind of my first intro into marketing and business there, and I had an opportunity to graduate with a bachelor's degree and with a marketing emphasis. And so from then on, right prior, about 3 months prior to me graduating, I started as an intern at a project and portfolio tech company headquartered here in Utah. So started as an intern, didn't know anything about demand gen, started learning more about the world of software as a service, and started really in corporate events. And from there, kind of grew out of corporate events and learned all about demand gen and decided to kind of make a pivot. I like the idea of being closer aligned with sales and, really focused on the bottom line and running campaigns that created business impact.
And you spent quite a few years, I see, at Marketware, and you
Mhm.
went from being director and MVP. How was your experience there, and what are some of the learnings that you think you acquired from that company and that role?
For sure. So I went from kind of at Task, which was the first tech company that I was with. And what was an exciting experience with them was seeing them grow from a startup to kind of a mid-sized company. We underwent 3 different rebrands. And so at that company, I felt like I had an opportunity to really understand how all of the different departments were connected and what the role of marketing really was. And so when I made the leap to Marketware as a director of demand gen, kind of went back to that small startup space where I found that I kind of missed aspects of that. I feel like it's fun once you get to that large size company, but I really enjoy the building phase. Being the one to architect and kind of set up the processes. So when I got to Marketware, which was focused on a healthcare company, they really were at ground zero in terms of they had a product, and they had a niche for it focused in healthcare. And so they had their client base really, really dialed in and focused. And they just needed an opportunity to get it to market, to get it out to more people. And so definitely a lot of learnings. I think that company, one of the exciting things for me was I had an opportunity to raise capital raise a couple of rounds of capital. And so if you've ever had a chance to do that, it's quite the dog and pony show. Going the rounds to find the right partner, really getting an opportunity to share your business, what your kind of vision is with your department and team. And so had an opportunity to just meet with venture capitalists from all over, and even go out to East Coast and be able to kind of pitch a little bit more about our company and offering there. And so that was a very unique experience to be part of the leadership team and rise up into a position of leadership where I was working hand in hand with our CEO, our VP of sales, our client success, our VP of client success. So
And
good experience.
and then you went from a startup again to a much larger company, which is Instructure. So what was the
Yep,
impact there, going back to a large company?
for sure. So it was nice in the sense of, we had bigger budgets, but I think what caught my interest about Instructure, we're most known for the makers of Canvas. And so for any of you that either are recently in college or have, kids that are in school, you might have come across our software. We provide a learning management platform for K through 12 and higher education. And so I think what was interesting about Instructure was that it had been around since 2008, but it happened to also be a product that hit the market at the right time. And so in terms of demand gen, the demand gen engine itself was actually newer to the company. I think when we kind of got started in the market, it was a little bit like riding a bicycle downhill, in the sense that they just happened to hit right time, had a great product, definitely better than anything that was out there. And so from a marketing standpoint, you kind of skip some of the strategy and some of the processes, foundation work. And so when I came in, I feel like it felt like a startup inside of a larger organization, because there was still so much left to build, so much left to explore and A/B test, when it came to the demand gen side specifically.
And what's your team like today, Instructure? So how many people in the marketing team, demand gen?
For sure. So we're smaller on the demand gen side. So myself, I'm actually our director of demand gen for our North America market, which is about where 80% of our business comes from. Something that's exciting about us is that back in 2019, we actually went from being publicly traded to being a privately held company, which is very unique from where a lot of people normally like to go. So I have myself, and then I also have a counterpart who tag teams with me for K through 12 and higher education. And then our global email marketing team also reports up through me. I also have my counterparts that run demand gen in APAC, Latin America, and our EMEA region as well. So
Awesome. And I know you, if I remember correctly, your favorite tech stack is with Salesforce and Marketo. That's something you're pretty used to. Is that what you have today, Instructure?
Yep, definitely. I've been familiar with Eloqua. Actually used HubSpot at my last organization, implemented them, everything from, the web to our email automation. Here I've had an opportunity to go back to Marketo, which I hadn't used in probably about 8 years. And so they've come a long ways, but they're, such a well-known player in the space with integrations for just about every system. So I use them heavily. Salesforce, absolutely. And then actually I've had an opportunity to get back into Tableau, which we have integrated with Salesforce. I had an opportunity to use Tableau. We actually had a partnership with them at my last company. And so it's been fun to leverage them again, as they're just, such a great, powerful platform when it comes to data and analytics.
And since you've used Eloqua, HubSpot, and Marketo, do you think, would you recommend one over the other based on company industry or size of the company? Is there a way or a method to select one versus the other?
Sure. I would say definitely size of the team and organization and also budget. Marketo and Eloqua as enterprise solutions definitely are a lot more expensive. I think HubSpot actually think that they've grown a lot in functionality, and they're great for kind of that small or mid-sized company. I think something that HubSpot has an advantage over some of the enterprise solutions is they're definitely built um, with a more user-friendly kind of intuitive interface. And so I started with HubSpot at my last organization when I didn't have a full-time marketing operations person. And so it was, some of us having to cross train and being able to get in there. And so I felt like HubSpot was a tool that wasn't designed with ops in mind. Whereas when you get into Eloqua or Marketo, you're really catering to that marketing ops role. And so at that point in the organization, you most likely have an FTE that can be in there all the time that's specialized to that role. So that's kind of what I would use as far as the the marker for when it makes sense to upgrade or not is one, definitely being mindful of your budget and spend because it can add up pretty quickly depending on how many contacts you have. And then second to that, I would say looking at your team structure for sure.
Makes sense. Yeah, especially on even HubSpot is getting pretty expensive now. They're definitely
Yep.
going up market in the last few years. So you mentioned Tableau, so I want to kind of touch on the analytics side.
Mhm.
What's your dashboard like? Is that in Salesforce? Is that in Marketo? Is that in Tableau? Like, how do you look
Mhm.
at data, and how frequently do you look, and what are the metrics that you look frequently?
For sure. So I absolutely love data. I think that it is the keystone to success when you're talking about demand gen. And I feel like it's what separates um, marketers from demand gen kind of specialists and really makes a difference. And so I'm fortunate enough to have an amazing revenue operations team that is helping us connect all of our data points into a digestible dashboard that we get to build together. So I actually look at all my data in Salesforce, but it's held within a Tableau dashboard. So it's actually built in Tableau and then embedded in our Salesforce instance. Um, my kind of North Star for success, number one, is pipeline for sure. So we have very clear pipeline targets, yearly, quarterly, and that's kind of my first metric that I look at. And then from there, click down into channel optimization, funnel velocity, um, campaign performance, and average days in stage, average days to close. It really gets pretty granular in terms of the data points that I'm looking at, but I probably have at least two or three reporting tabs open on my computer at all times,
And when you say
7 days a week.
pipeline, when you say pipeline, do you mean overall pipeline of the sales team in the company, or is just the pipeline that is sourced, quote unquote, by marketing or influenced by
Sure.
marketing? How do you look at that?
So I definitely look at both. I have specific targets for what we refer to as just our MGO, so marketing generated opportunities. While it's important for me to make sure that we're hitting our targets, I mean, I do look at the overall health of the organization. Um, we really try and play team here, so it's never a sales versus marketing, but it's always, where are the gaps as a business as a whole, and where can we help out? And so I would say at the end of the day, I'm on the hook for our marketing generated pipeline and specifically inbound from the marketing generated side of the house. But I do like to look at the overall mix that we have coming in because COVID was a perfect example where we had such a big volume of inbound that there was no need. I mean, we needed to pull the outbound team over to help us on the inbound side with the influx we had, right? And so in that case, I expected to see the mix look a little bit different.
And so when you say marketing generated opportunities or MGO, is that looked from a first touch, last touch perspective? How is your funnel today and your attribution?
Yep. So attribution is, I think, every marketer's like kind of nightmare of a term in terms of how you track that. We do look at first touch. We actually do have an even distribution model reporting that we can look at the multi-touch, like a evenly distributed percentage, as I say, of attribution. But as far as lead sourced and what comes in, it is based on that first touch. But then we have the opportunity to kind of track multiple campaigns as someone moves through the funnel.
You track those campaigns in Salesforce and
Mm-hmm.
using like campaign object?
Yep, we use the campaign object. Again, our revenue operations team has done a great job of working with us to set up that process, but it is very intricate in terms of required fields, everything from dollar amounts to expected responses. Tracking links are auto-populated. So we definitely leverage the campaign objects.
Nice. Awesome. So I want to also talk about lead sources since we talked about campaigns. I want
Yep.
to understand what are some of your top lead sources today and what are you investing most of your budget?
Yep. So I would say our website is definitely still our number one kind of biggest muscle when it comes to lead generation opportunities. Now, if you look at the mix of where people are gravitating towards in terms of content, oftentimes that is demand gen offers that are now posted, like a webinar that's been reposted to the website. But overall, content strategy is definitely at the forefront of our lead gen engine. That's something that was a very big thing for me when I came on, is understanding how much content we had, and making sure, again, that was at the forefront. So I would say our website's our number one. Second to that, a big contributor for us is events. We are in the education industry, and in this field, face-to-face is actually still very much valued. And so we've seen a lot of success with both K through 12 and higher ed, really gravitating towards events as kind of industry thought leadership, trade shows, forums, and summits. So that's been important. And then I would say a click down from that is just a lot of our paid efforts. So directory listings and content syndication programs.
And is there any other, sorry, I should have asked you probably earlier, but is there any other technologies that help you run these campaigns or other platform that you use to manage these campaigns outside of obviously all the, marketing automation like Marketo
Right.
and Salesforce?
We've definitely have piloted a few different kind of ABM tools. There's one, Terminus, that we've actually used in the past year that's performed well for us. That you can, bring in intent data in and have an engagement dashboard and things like that. I think right now we primarily just use, like I said, our internal tools, and then we closely monitor the success of those campaigns. And success for me is determined on impact to pipeline. And so it's not just lead volume, but it's actually how stuff is progressing through the funnel. So I'd say that's kind of been the primary in terms of platforms. I mean, LinkedIn, Google search, display, paid media efforts that way, and then very specific directory listing channels.
Nice. So yeah, perfect. I want to also go back to the events because I think that's going to be is a pretty interesting discussion nowadays. You mentioned that events is one of the top lead sources, obviously before COVID started. How do you see the transition from live events to virtual events? And I know you guys also have a big user conference as part of your annual programs. Can you tell us a little more about this?
Yeah, so I mean, it's been interesting for sure. As everyone knows, field marketing took a hit this year with COVID, and a lot of our the annual trade shows that we look forward to, needing to move online. I think that it is definitely unique. One of the things that it has allowed, though, is that I think it's allowed us to have a little bit more access to some of our users. One of the tight things with education is that, budgets are tight, and unless you're a very large district or institution, chances are you can't afford to have too many of your users travel. And so one thing that was kind of nice with some of these shows going online is that we got to connect with users that for the first time that, normally wouldn't get approved to travel because they're kind of on the lower side of management or just budget restrictive. So I think that's been one of the pros. It's been hard to measure engagement. You come back from a show, you typically have your hot leads list, your, medium and low. And with it being online, it's kind of hard to know and understand who truly engaged and who was, listening to your content or presentation because you can't physically see people as easily. So that's been a challenge. Yes, in terms of our user conference, we have a very big industry show that everyone typically looks forward to, around 4,000 people. We moved that online for the first time this year and ended up with a little over 30,000 people registered, which was just amazing. It was a global conference, which was also unique for us. So there were some pros in that. I think, like I said, we had a lot of people thanking us because in the past they haven't been able to go because it's been budget restrictive, and this year that wasn't the case. And so it wasn't geography dependent either. Usually, when we do it on the West Coast, we get a lot of West Coast people out. And so there weren't any bounds and boundaries in that sense.
Do you think that the engagement is higher if you organize a virtual event versus a series of webinars, for example? Because in many ways, they are similar. Right? At the end is an online presentation. What do you think is the difference, and do you see a difference in engagement?
Yes, I do see a little bit of difference in engagement. I think one of the differences between a standard webinar and more of an event focus is the engagement in the session or the platform that you can do. So typically, like, we host our webinars through just a Zoom instance. With the virtual event, we actually used a more tailored kind of event platform that allowed for more of a real type kind of networking and connections feel. And so I think that was the difference, where people could actually come and it looked like it was a table that you were around. There was a whiteboard feature. So I think if you're gonna go the event route and you want to pitch it as an event, it's important to make sure that the tools and the tech stack and the platform that you're using allows for additional engagement. When you do a webinar, it's very much a presenter style mode where you don't get to see a lot of face of the attendees. You might just have the one chat feature. One of the things that we did with this event is really we had a selfie booth like option. We had badges people could earn. So we really tried to gamify the experience to make it feel and kind of replicate as much as we could the face-to-face experience.
And can you share what platform did you guys use for the event?
Sure. We used Remo and Mobile Writer. So it's a couple of different platforms there. I've used Loom before. That's another one that I actually had an opportunity to present on as a speaker. That was a great experience. So I would just say make sure to do your research and shop around for a platform that's going to complement what you're trying to accomplish, and also make sure that it integrates with your existing marketing tech stack.
Nice, thank you. Awesome. Nice to hear. I hear obviously a lot now of
Yeah.
virtual events platforms, so I'm always curious to know which one is supporting these large virtual events. And 30,000 users is pretty large.
Yeah.
Cool. So I also want to ask you about your relationship with sales, because obviously, your focus is pipeline.
Hmm.
You are very, very concentrated on generating more and more opportunities for the sales team. So how do you work with them? What kind of cadence do you have? Do you share a dashboard together? Like, how does the process work?
For sure. So this is personally one of my soapboxes when it comes to demand gen, is having a good relationship with sales. I've been in organizations where it's been a us versus them environment, and it never works in anyone's favor. And so there's a saying that says, "A rising tide raises all ships." And I feel like at the end of the day, when the company is doing well, it just makes everyone's job easier. And so for me, I really, when I got here at Instructure, um, I really extended extended a peace offering when it came to our SDR team. They actually used to sit with marketing. They've now realigned and they sit with sales. Um, but I have a weekly kind of stand up meeting with our SDR managers, and they're a part of our marketing agenda. We have biweekly sales huddles where I'm a fraction of the agenda, um, of all the things that they're talking about. So I absolutely love our global SDR manager. She's amazing. Um, I have a really good, open, transparent relationship with sales leadership as well. Um, I always let them know that we're here to, be a partner to them. Um, I think it's also important because they're kind of our boots on the ground. And so my campaign can only be as successful as the feedback that they're providing. And then obviously they're the ones that are following up with the leads. So for me, my goal is always to give them as much ammunition as they need to make sure that the campaign is successful and that they understand, you know, what this lead source was, where it came from, what how they can best follow up and kind of handle those and provide as much insight as possible. So I definitely recommend everyone, if you don't have a good relationship with sales, to absolutely make that a key area of focus, because it makes my job so much easier, and it makes our campaigns so much more successful.
Do you think it matters where they report, if they report to marketing or sales?
I've seen it. It's every organization and team that I've been a part of. I've seen it different ways. I used to think that the only way for them to really, be successful was to align with marketing. But I've actually been very impressed at. Um, I don't feel like there's been a disconnect when they moved over to sales. I think for them, it's actually been a little bit better to have that alignment with sales leadership. Um, and we didn't drop off the cadence of our marketing meetings and things like that. So there wasn't much of a shift. Um, I think it's a good question, and everybody needs to examine their org structure. I don't think I've seen it work better in some ways. I think for me, what has made the difference is not where they're sitting, but who's sitting at the table, and making sure that you have a good relationship with that person, regardless of where they are in the org structure.
Yeah, I like this. I like this part a lot. I think that's 100% is what makes the difference. If the marketing person really understands sales, then can lead a good SDR team. But if they
Hmm.
don't, it's much better if they are under sales. And as long as there is the alignment that you mentioned, then everything should flow properly.
Yep, definitely. And they should be incentivized to, they're on the hook for their handoff calls and their numbers. And so for me, it's never made sense to, I guess, sever the hand that feeds you in that sense.
Mm.
Because it really is. I've always just seen it as a win-win for everybody. I'm like, hey, we would love to comp you more and help you crush your numbers, right? And selfishly, I would love for my campaigns to get up on the scoreboard. So I've always seen it as a win-win when we work together.
Is there any trick to recommend in terms of handoff of leads to SDR? Do you guys do anything in particular to make sure that all the leads are followed up properly and there is enough information for the SDR?
For sure. Yeah. So a couple of things that I've implemented are campaign briefs. And it's a templated PDF doc that can be attached to the Salesforce campaign that just gives them a little bit of insight into what that campaign was. So you can use the campaign description field in Salesforce. Sometimes it's not enough, and I like to attach supplemental materials. So that works really well. And then we also try and get in front of uh, events or activities that are coming up. So we have that biweekly cadence where I have an opportunity to say, hey, over the next 2 weeks, here's what's coming down the pipeline as far as key event dates. Try and give them as much of a heads up so they can create a sequence in advance. We use outreach as kind of our SDR email sequence system. And so giving them as much runway as you can. And then once the leads are uploaded, I also send a follow-up email that says, new leads and new inbound leads in your queue. And then I do create a Salesforce campaign report because we have SLAs for different leads. And so that Salesforce report, I give them insight into, and then also helps me ensure that stuff is actually moving through the funnel from inbound to contacting, all the way to marketing qualified opportunities. And so there's a few different checkpoints that I've kind of implemented to make sure that, stuff goes in correctly at the front end, gets followed up with, and then I also leave room for a feedback loop to say, hey, how did your conversations go with that event? Did people remember us? Did you guys feel like it was a waste of your time? Do we need to adjust scoring? So we're having those 360-degree conversations.
That's really awesome. So I have one more question for you, Krystal, and
Sure.
so the end of the fiscal year is coming up soon for everyone. Do you have any quick hack to share with any demand generation leaders and professionals here if they want to try to get some SQLs or SQO or whatever the name they use for opportunities or more pipeline in very quickly? What would you recommend?
Bribing your sales team. No. I think, one thing that I've come to realize in my marketing tenure is that most organizations don't have a lack of contacts problem. They have a lack of follow-up problem. And so I always say fortune is in the follow-up. And I think that it's sometimes getting creative and digging through your database to find opportunities for reviving some of those conversations. And so whether that's going back through your closed lost opportunities, going back through your event leads from a show that might have been a few months ago, sending them some kind of a revive campaign. I know our APAC team likes to call them, I think, zombie campaigns. And just kind of bringing some of those back is that sometimes you can find some low-hanging fruit or some quick wins and stuff that you've already brought in and spent money on. And so, like I said, infamously, I've always found that a lot of this work that we did at the front end, we just, there's room for more follow-up. And if I had a metaphor I could place around it, it would be there's always a little bit more toothpaste in the tube. And so sometimes you just got to roll a little bit more to kind of squeeze it out there. But especially if you're limited on budgets, or you're looking again for some quick wins, take some time to go back through your data.
I love the toothpaste metaphor. I think a lot of people are gonna try to squeeze more toothpaste out of the tube in the next 2 months, especially this year.
Right. Yeah, definitely.
Krystal, it was really great having you as a guest on the episode today. So I really enjoyed the conversation. Thanks so much for joining us.
Absolutely. And likewise, it was great conversation and happy to connect with anybody afterwards.
Thank you again.